Welcome to the Finer Games Club, where high-class taste meets low-tier gameplay. My name is Martijn, aka Vishy.
And I am Martijn, aka Foodie.
Welcome back, everybody. Woohoo!
Welcome.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bam.
Bam.
Ooh, good old water.
Yeah. Water this time. Oh, I'm the luxury
Water this
one.
time.
I've got.
I get my guilty pleasure Club Mate
that is not allowed.
in a IKEA Pokal glass. That's the appropriate glass. It's like just like there's wine glasses and there's beer cups, or this is the appropriate container to drink mate in.
Is this the appropriate one for Apfelschorle?
I think so, yeah, because
Maybe.
That's wine adjacent.
Yes. Same. It's also a fruit, right? It's close enough.
It's close enough. And you let it sit there for long enough, it kind of tastes like wine.
Yes.
Okay, how are you doing, man?
I'm great. Yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm looking forward to this episode. Been lots and lots of fun, and yeah, we got another banger, I think, today. What are we going to talk about?
Every single YouTuber in the gaming sphere has to do this video.
Yes,
like.
Yes. It's something that's just burned into your mind, and at some point it has to come out. And I guess we're doing it now.
Gaming is dying.
Yeah. Oh my God, gaming is gone. Oh. Yeah. So what are we doing in this episode? So of course, Martin and we have been gaming for quite a long time already. So we both started, I think, in the 90s. Maybe you more early 90s. For me, more mid 90s.
Yes.
And we've seen gaming grow from pretty much a small pastime for nerds in the 90s to, well, the largest entertainment industry in the world, greater than movies and music combined. So try telling that, or imagine telling that to somebody born or living in the 70s or in the 80s, that all of that would be replaced by, well, not replaced, but at least overshadowed by some computerized entertainment.
Imagine this, there are people still in the gaming industry that are older than the medium itself.
Yes. So they saw the medium, well, maybe not for us, because it started a little bit earlier than we were born, of course.
I mean, there was a lot of text-based RPGs and adventure games.
Yeah.
Like
and
in the 80s, in the late 70s even, yeah. There were even like attempts at like MMOs, like super early MMOs and stuff like that. And that was way before our time. But if we're thinking about typical graphics-based interactive computer experiences, I've been basically there from the start. You came in a little bit later.
Yeah. It's exactly those kind of 5-6 years of difference.
Yes.
Yeah, so what that kind of allowed us to do is to see where gaming started, at least for us, when gaming started to become a little bit more mainstream in the mid to late 90s, all the way up until the 2020s, where gaming started becoming really big, so that basically nobody could escape it anymore. And now you see everybody knows about Twitch, and there's kids running around in their speak, they're referencing chat and those kind of things, which is kind of
and
crazy.
And they want to become streamers.
Yeah. It's not a niche thing anymore. It's permeated absolutely everything.
It's funny but it's the only medium of that magnitude that is still not fully accepted by wider society, by anybody outside of it. Like, people who don't watch movies at least can relate to people who do.
Mm-hmm.
People who don't go to concerts can relate to people who do. But I feel like
because everybody's been in contact with it, right? Even the people that don't really do it, they have been in contact with it. They know what it is.
Yeah.
Which is
but
not
that
the case
doesn't go
for
gaming.
Yeah.
But
it has changed
there's
a lot
still
already.
Parents around where that's kind of a mystery box. Mm-hmm. What's my kid doing on the computer all day? Like, that seems strange.
Why is that
to me.
so interesting?
Yeah.
I think the one point, because of course you shouted like gaming is dying, and of course it's going to have something to do with the topic that we wanted to talk about today, which is why modern games fail, the Avowed phenomenon. Why have we called this episode the Avowed phenomenon? Why have we called that episode like that? We feel that a lot of modern games, particularly created by the AAA publishers have along the way picked up some traits that we can't really say are positive, and where some older games actually covered those things a lot better. A lot of these games seem to be, trying to, of course, attract a large audience, but at the same time, sometimes evolving backwards or not evolving at all. And that's kind of the topic that we want to talk about today. So we want to take a look at a lot of modern games, compare them maybe to some older games, and figure out what those things are.
Yes, I mean, that's a very common sentiment in all kinds of media, that if you try to appeal to everybody, you end up appealing to nobody. There's a saying in politics, you have to have 10%, you have to have 90% against you to have 10% for you. And I feel like that's what older games have been doing really, really well. Like those games knew who they were made for, and they were completely catering towards that core audience. Whereas nowadays, I feel like a lot of game developers and publishers are actively trying to alienate their core audiences, or lecturing them, and being kind of speaking through the games. So figurative, not literally speaking, but figuratively speaking down, talking down on the gamers. You feel there's a degree of disrespect towards the core gamer audience. In an attempt to bring a wider audience in, because that's what the bottom line is, especially in the AAA sector, is how many people can we get to spend money on our product?
Yeah.
And in doing so, you alienate your core audience. And I feel like we're the classic core audience for video games. And of course, we feel that, especially in the AAA space, games are not really made for us anymore.
No.
And we both love the AA and indie sector still. And there's the occasional AAA game that will be absolutely mind-blowing. Let's just say, let's take Zelda and Elden Ring or Baldur's Gate as recent examples. So this still exists, but in the broader spectrum, we have games like Avowed, the Saints Row remake, The Veilguard, Redfall, that are AAA attempts at making like a game that would potentially appeal to everybody, but that ends up not connecting with anybody.
Yeah. It's like a lot of games, or at least publishers or devs behind it, they are not really willing to make hard decisions anymore about what to do with their game, what to put in there, what mechanics to introduce. There's like this, almost this standard mold of what a game should have. So a game should probably be open world. It should probably have crafting. It should have some level system. It should have light RPG mechanics. It should have multiple weapons. It should be offering you tons and tons of side quests to sink time in. But all that is doing for a lot of games is just creating a jumble of things that a lot of players cannot really identify with, because most players are not really attracted to everything at once. They are attracted to certain parts of that. But if they try to put everything in, then usually everything is a little bit undercooked, right? There's just no focus on something.
Bethesda in past decades has made a career on that. Their systems have never been particularly deep. They've been all about quantity, but a wise man once said, quantity is a quality in itself. And Bethesda really excelled at, we have a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You can become a magician, you can be a melee fighter, you can quest, you can talk, you can craft, you can forge a sword, you can do this, you become the head of the Magic Academy, you also become the head of the Black Hooded, what was it, the Thieves Guild or whatever.
Yeah.
That did work out really well for them in this kind of RPG and in this kind of junk food RPG style. And I don't mean this in such a derogatory way, but it's like a convenient food version of what an RPG is. And it's fun. The problem is that all games or a lot of AAA games seem to be catering towards this mold, and this is now what we I guess what we call a Ubisoft style game, because in recent years they have been the poster boys of this homogenized game design where everything has a skill tree, everything has a progression system, everything has map markers, everything has a huge open world, and the only difference between Far Cry and Avatar is the setting. And the only difference between Far Cry and Assassin's Creed is the time period and third person versus first person.
Yeah.
Melee versus gunplay.
You can easily add Watch Dogs and Star Wars Outlaws to that list also.
Yes.
All Ubisoft games.
Star Wars Outlaws is Assassin's Creed or Far Cry with the Star Wars coat of paint.
Yeah.
And maybe like a little this little faction mechanic tacked onto it that is not particularly deep. It's just a surface level idea.
But that's exactly the problem, right? Like none of the systems are deep enough for you to really care about them, or for them to have a really marked effect on how the game plays. And I think that sets these games, all of these Ubisoft games, apart from the Bethesda games like Elder Scrolls Oblivion or Skyrim, where yes, in Skyrim and in Oblivion, the combat system was also not the best, and the questing was maybe also not the topmost level, but everything was good enough, and everything logically fit together. It all fit the mold of the game, and I think that's what for me is different with Assassin's Creed or with Far Cry, particularly the latest entries, where you feel that everything has just been thrown into there because it's popular, and because they think, and I guess it's mostly the investors that think so, people will buy the game when it has crafting or when it has an open world or something like that.
It's a marketing talking point.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just a box where you can just feel how they're sitting in that meeting.
Biggest open world ever. Yeah.
Yeah. We've heard that so many times, but why does big even really matter if it's filled with copy and paste checkbox type content, right?
I think it can matter if the game is supposed to evoke a feeling of vastness. I think Elden Ring in particular is better for it because of its size. Because it pulls this trick where most open worlds will reveal themselves to you at that stepping out moment. You come out of the tutorial area or out of a tomb or a tower, and suddenly you have this vast world in front of you.
Breath of the Wild moment.
The Breath of the Wild moment. Elden Ring does that too, but then it just keeps expanding. And I don't know if you probably haven't played it, but if you start out with the map in Elden Ring, you see this giant ass map, and you realize, oh, I'm just this tiny speck in this huge open world. And then as you discover the map more, the map zooms out and shows you more parts that are uncovered. And you discover those, and it zooms out even more, and there's more uncovered. So it doesn't reveal its cards at first, but it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And by the time there's a cap, no spoilers, but there's a city you eventually come to, and the first time you play through this blind, you would swear that you're in the end game, and then there's a whole other third to the game that reveals itself afterward. So in that case, it's actually amazing because it suggests to you this feeling on being on a grand adventure.
Yeah.
But every part of the map has a meaning, and you'll have to go there eventually, and there's unique content spread out all over it, etc. So there is merit to quantity, in my opinion.
But it's a different type of quantity, right? Because if the world in an open world game is just a container to put lots of chests in with random crafting items that you can pick up, then I would argue I'd rather not have that and have a much smaller world that's more deliberately crafted and that has more unique content in it. But if the world in itself and the vastness of it and the size and the sheer scale of it has some function and is not implemented in a way that is just the conveyor for something that artificially increases the size of the game or the length of the game, then I guess I'm completely fine with it. For me, a very nice example there is Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. Both of those games have very vast, maybe not super large, but quite vast open worlds as well.
I mean, Tears of the Kingdom with its 3 levels of verticality, it's quite insane.
But there I had a very different feeling. There I actually was driven to explore the world because I was interested in knowing what was in a place where I hadn't been yet. Whereas if I know that I'm just looking at a map with lots of question marks on them, and I know this question mark, when I get to it, it's going to be either one of these 5 things, then I'm all of a sudden not so interested anymore, because why would I just want to regurgitate the same thing over and over again?
This is true. The exploration is not just about the exploration itself. It's also about the reward that you receive for exploring. Like, what do you actually find? And one of my biggest gripes with modern style open worlds is like this compartmentalized checkbox style content. Like you'll either find a chest or an escort mission that'll always play out the same, or you find an outpost, or you find a tower. It's got to be either one of those 5 things. And it's not going to be, whatever you find is not going to be unique, and it's not going to be specific to that part of the map or to the lore in that area that you're or that town that you find yourself in. There's no unique content there. You just know 10 hours into the game, or even less, 5 hours into the game, you've seen all the type of content the game has to offer, and you'll just find minor variations of that.
You'll just get more of it.
The idea of exploration in that moment is completely removed. It's nullified because you know exactly what you're going to get at any point in the game.
If I think about because one of the things that I personally really like to do in games is exploring. And my drive to explore is usually, it's triggered by that feeling that you want to know if there is something interesting somewhere. And if the game for a couple of times gives you that impulse, like, when you explore, you get rewarded in interesting ways, then I get driven to explore more. And I remember Starfield, when that came out, I was completely...
I don't like Starfield.
No, me neither. I was completely subverted because it's a Bethesda game, and I always loved exploring in Bethesda games because there was always interesting stuff.
I'm a sucker for Fallout and Elder Scrolls. Love those games.
There's interesting environmental storytelling to find in many places, in many corners of the world. But in Starfield, all that you got was 1,000 lifeless planets that had just had a different color and different plants on them. And then 1 of 10 standard prefab buildings that you could explore.
And Luke Stevens made a video on this, and he said he found the super interesting cave on one of the planets where there was a bunch of dead bodies spread around, and it was environmentally telling a story about maybe a bunch of explorers who got there, got overwhelmed by a monster, left all their loot on the ground, and maybe a log here and there. And then he goes to a completely different planet in a different galaxy, in a different Milky Way, and he finds the exact same cave with the exact same placement of environmental storytelling, with the exact same dead bodies and everything. Like, what the heck? And also, why do people on one end of the galaxy have the exact same computers with the same operating systems on? It's like it's so lore inaccurate. The lore does not support this type of game.
Yeah.
And that to me is a complete immersion breaker.
Yeah. I mean, if you compare it at the game that I'm going to name now, it's also admittedly not good. But I almost liked it more in this respect, at least only in this respect, The Outer Worlds, which was kind of similar in style. It was a little goofier than Starfield. But what I liked about that more is that you actually had 3 or 4 planets that were distinct. It wasn't great exploration, but at least you didn't have just the focus on give us a lot of planets rather than actual meaningful exploration.
I would say that space exploration is probably one of the hardest things to pull off in video games. Because in Outer Worlds, I did not feel like I was exploring space.
No, you were exploring planets. Yeah.
Or even planets. I didn't feel like I was on a planet. It barely felt like each of the planets barely felt like a village, like a fully realized village. It felt less than that, because you would be you would have a little like external area. eventually get to a settlement that feels really small and has a couple of people living in it. How is that selling me the fantasy of exploring a planet? To me, that game didn't work out at all. And it was very vanilla gameplay-wise as well, with
Yeah,
a
it's
lot
very
of
simple.
unfulfilled combat was weak. Enemy AI was very bad. You could tell that they did put effort into offering multiple solutions and skill checks and stealthing, hacking, or whatever it was, lock picking. But it felt like all the solutions to all the quests were really predetermined and not really organic.
Yeah. That was that Obsidian as well? You remember?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Obsidian also, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of interesting to see titans of the industry like Obsidian, BioWare, Bethesda also, like losing some of their initial flair and not being able to really get to the heights that they reached with some other games that they made before. Fallout New Vegas, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, for instance.
Dude, I mean, Oblivion, when it came out, was technically, just from a technical standpoint, significantly above the curve with
Yes.
almost everybody else. Yes, there were some loading screens here and there in like the capital city and in some of the dungeons, but loading times were insanely low back then. It blew my mind that even on my bad computer, the game loaded really quickly, and you could explore such vast stretches of the world without loading screens, and everything felt so organic and so well put together. They were, and you have to consider that was ahead of the curve
Yes.
in every technical aspect. And these AAA developers don't seem to be ahead of the curve anymore. And like Avowed, taking Avowed, that is a game with Microsoft money behind it. They had a significant budget doing that. And I would argue that Avowed, I haven't played it, but I've seen the comparisons to Oblivion and Skyrim, and in terms of world interactivity and systemic design, Avowed is worse than Outer Worlds, and Outer Worlds is worse than Skyrim.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can offer some kind of like actual experience with that because
And by the way, we're comparing Avowed to a 14-year-old game with Skyrim, and we're comparing it to a 19-year-old game with Oblivion.
Correct. Yeah. Was 2006. You're correct. Yeah. So, in preparation of this episode, I kind of like declared myself well, not
Brave
a victim,
enough.
brave enough
Crash test
to
dummy.
to
Crash
be
test
a
dummy.
crash test dummy for Avowed. So I played it for about 3.5 hours, and needless to say,
You're a better man than I.
needless to say, it was a really interesting experience. So you have to imagine that the very first thing that you do in Avowed is to create your character. And the character creator that's presented to you with all the presets and everything, it immediately kind of showed me the kind of look and feel that this game was going to go for. And that look and feel was already kind of like, because there is this design mold that we're seeing in the last few years where a lot of games are going for this slightly overly saturated color scheme, lots of purple, lots of magenta, weird details on the characters and everything. And yeah, it was very obviously this is one of those games, and it's not an aesthetic that I personally like, but of course detail, that I just clicked through
It's
that.
the Veilguard aesthetic.
Yeah, it's the Veilguard aesthetic.
The slightly mobile gamey look.
Yeah. Like just enough realism to trigger the uncanny valley effect, and the rest is just overblown colors, basically.
Yes.
But when I actually finally got into the game and I went through the very first cutscenes, then the first video game trope, so to say, already kind of triggered. We have like a slightly amnesiac protagonist that gets into a shipwreck. He gets shipwrecked and washes up on the shore with a lot of people dead and just one guy still remaining, who happens to be some kind of, I don't know, humanoid pink blue bear or something like that. Strange looking character, funny guy. And then
Is that the Garrus?
no,
Prototype,
that's
archetype from
that guy
no.
shows up later. This is a
Okay.
different guy, and I can't even tell you his name because I don't remember. But I'm not sure if you've ever experienced this, but this was the very first game where, upon meeting some of the characters, or particularly seeing some of the mechanics, I actually audibly sighed to myself. Audibly
Yeah.
sighed, and just looking at my desk and like, oh no, it's
Yeah,
one
when
of
you
those
go,
games
oh,
again.
it's one of those.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this was within the first 10 seconds of gaining control. It happened the first time already. You're on that beach, you're walking onto the shore, and it's very clear you basically don't have anything. You don't have any weapons, you don't have any potions, you're hurt, you're distraught, everything. And then the very first thing that you see are these little wooden boxes that obviously look half destroyed. They're damaged. There's planks missing. Everything. And when you walk up to them, it's very clear. If you look at it, that's easy to break, right? It looks breakable, and you can see items inside because it draws them inside. But the game thinks it's necessary to print a huge icon over those boxes telling you this can be broken. And it does this everywhere. This is market for the whole game. The game just telegraphs absolutely everything. What you need to do, it doesn't trust your intelligence that you might be able to figure something out for yourself.
Yeah, like what would happen if I were stranded on a beach and there were a couple of boxes that seemed to have items inside? My first instinct would be to break them and see if there's something to eat or something that I could use as a weapon in it.
Yeah.
Like that is real life logic. You don't need to draw a white outline for me around it to try that out. Because what that white outline communicates to you as the player is that all this other stuff that you see that doesn't have an outline is just set dressing and you can't interact with it.
Yeah.
So the video game reminds me, by the way, I'm just a game.
Yes.
Forget escapism. Forget immersion.
Yeah. And forget thinking for yourself also, because we'll do it for you. And that is a very big part of at least my personal reasons for disliking Avowed and games like it. Because, well, skip forward a little bit in that intro and you get to your very first combat scenarios. And the combat scenarios follow that thinking exactly, because I might not be the hugest Souls fan, but what I do like about games like it is that the telegraphing that the enemies do to make you see what is happening, what kind of attacks they're doing it naturally. They're doing it with their actual movements. And in Avowed, those movements are definitely there as well, but the game does think it's necessary to give you all kinds of other gamey cues that tell you the same thing. For instance, if a enemy is about to attack you with an attack that can be blocked, then their entire health bar flashes, just to show you should hit the block key now. And if there is an attack that cannot be blocked, then everything flashes red and you know that you have to dodge.
At this point, it becomes just Simon Says.
Yes, exactly.
Here's a green flash, press the green key. Here's a red flash, press the red key. That is not treating me like an adult.
No. And it's not allowing me to fail either and just find out for myself how this game is supposed to be played.
Yeah, and that for me is possibly we talked about going into this a little bit before, and I mentioned to you, like, my biggest gripe with modern day gaming is that there's too much hand-holding, too much streamlining. The games are too smoothed out. They're not rough around the edges at all. There's no punishment for failure. There's no consequences. I compare this to, you drive a racing game. You're at full speed, and you hit the walls on the side of the road, and the game pushes you right back onto the street. You maybe lose 10 to 15 kilometers per hour speed, but you're right back in it. What I want to happen is if I drive into a wall full speed, I want to feel consequences from action. I want my car to crash, so that next time I think about how fast I'm going to go into this curve. And this is obviously just an analogy for other types of for other types of games as well. If I do something stupid in the game, I want to be punished for it. If I make a poor decision, I want to be punished for it. If I insult a character in an RPG, I want there to be repercussions for that. And because that is the only thing that makes succeeding in the game feel truly like a success, like something that you've earned, like that's something that you should get a reward for. And also, making poor decisions on purpose to see how they play out can be sparking your curiosity. Yeah. And I feel like this is something that is just done so poorly in modern games. If you even down to like the level of like the dumbing down of core gameplay elements. For example, think of invisible walls. You cannot go here because of reasons. Because the game is a game and you cannot draw outside the lines. Hotspot climbing. Think of God of War. You're playing a literal god that is like 2.5 meters tall, or I don't know, like muscle packed. And the dude cannot get over a tiny ledge unless it has yellow paint on it. What is that about?
Yeah. What does that tell you about the character, right?
Yeah.
The world is just a backdrop that you're walking around in. It's not something that you are really...
It's a ghost train ride.
Yeah. Yeah, you're just being fooled on all sides, right?
And I don't like when the cracks show in the simulation, because that takes me out of it.
Yeah. Another interesting one about Avowed is that, in Avowed, there isn't really like a stealing mechanic, which is kind of like showing those cracks that you just talked about, because it's not something that I tried myself, but I saw it in videos where there's market stalls, right? And on top of those market stalls, there's, for instance, apples, bread, other types of items that are laying there that you can take them. And you can take them right in front of the merchant that is standing next to it. And
that even happened in Cyberpunk. Like, you could literally walk up to people in Cyberpunk and steal food off their table and they wouldn't react to it. Like, Gothic had this figured out.
Yes. If you did that in Gothic, they would attack you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, insult you or comment on it.
Yeah. It's like, do you need that or something like that? Are you that poor or something like that?
And you cannot give enough credit to Rockstar and their games.
Yeah.
Because that shit don't fly in Red Dead Redemption.
No, Red Dead Redemption had an extremely reactive world, and it was almost immersive simmy in some ways.
Except the story missions.
Yes, of course, yeah. Scripted set pieces, but I mean, there's definitely a place for that. Good scripted is better than badly unscripted, I guess.
Yeah, with Red Dead, the only thing that irritates me a little bit is the extreme contrast between the open world emergent gameplay and the scripted storyline missions. It's almost like you're playing two different games in one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even though both are admittedly good in this case.
Both are excellent, but they're completely
it's a bit disjointed.
Antithetic in terms of game design philosophy.
Yeah. One interesting thing that I was thinking about before is how a lot of modern games, because we were talking about the fact that the game does not allow you to fail, right? And if we think all the way back about the way how RPGs kind of evolved over the years, early RPGs actually allowed you to fail in very spectacular ways. For instance, in Morrowind, it's possible to kill characters that actually break the main quest. And the game
warns you.
And the game warns you if you kill somebody because nobody is unkillable in Morrowind. Everyone can be killed. And if you kill a character that is necessary for a main quest, then of course there's a slight gamey way of letting you know. It actually pops up a text box that says something like, with the killing of this character, the thread of prophecy is severed. Reload a save, or persist in the doomed world that you have created. So the game is just saying like, okay, this is bad what you just did, because you won't be able to complete the game in a normal way anymore. But if you want to play this way, who are we to say no, right? So the game actually let you actively make that decision, but it told you whenever you cross this boundary. And I think that is really cool.
It would have to otherwise completely rewrite the story.
Yes, and Baldur's Gate 3 does that. Baldur's Gate 3
based
does
on
that.
based on a non-scripted interaction that is player specific.
Yeah, but there's a lot of so what they did in Baldur's Gate is that
Don't spoil. I haven't
yeah,
finished it yet.
yeah. So
Don't
what
spoil.
they did in Baldur's Gate is that if there are certain things or certain items that you need at some point, and you happen to lose them either because of unfortunate reasons or because of your own stupidity, then the game does not prevent you from doing that, but the game finds another way. There's a backup strategy, so to say, that the game implements to get those items back into your hand, or to make sure that the character that you got rid of, which was necessary in a later story beat, gets lore accurately replaced by another character that performs the same function. And that is a type of dedication to your game, because it would be very easy to just go
That is nuts.
Yeah, that's absolutely nuts. To just make those characters unkillable, or to make those actions impossible or impossible.
I mean, I wouldn't hold it against the developer. Like, I said this last time. I still haven't finished it, but I'm replaying Vampire Bloodlines, and you cannot drop quest items in that game.
No.
And that is okay. I mean, making a game is hard enough as it is. We got to cut developers slack. You cannot account for every single action that somebody could possibly be taking. But we're talking about a general game design philosophy that is being upheld by these typically older games, or nowadays AA and indie developers, that we don't seem to find in many AAA modern games. For me, a big gripe that I want to bring up is, for example, forced live service elements. Always online. Everybody's currently out there trying to create the next Overwatch, trying to create the next Fortnite, the next forever game that people are going to be spending thousands of hours in for the next decade.
The next Call of Duty, the next Counter-Strike.
Which by design is a flawed idea, because people cannot have 10 forever games. You can only really have one or two.
Yeah.
Because then all your time is already consumed. So you have to have a very good, if you're into Fortnite and you play that 24/7, you have to have a very good reason to drop that.
Yeah, then you probably need to be, I don't know, severed like the people in Severance to have a second forever game, maybe. That might work.
And then therefore you have extremely talented developers such as Arcane Studios who are pushed to make games like Redfall that totally go against the strengths of that studio. And what ends up is them being shut down because their game is a miserable failure. Because that is a completely different skill set to make this type of live service game. And I don't think there's almost any live service game that isn't controversial to a degree, or that hasn't had like its moments of failure or struggle. Like Helldivers 2 was received very well at the beginning, and then a couple of publisher side decisions were made, like with regarding PSN accounts, but also developer-centric decisions such as nerfing certain guns and taking the fun out of the game by trying to overbalance it. And the game falls out of favor. So to find that kind of success in the live service world and maintain it is next to impossible. Like Fortnite is almost a freak accident in that sense.
Yeah. But it does show that, and that's one of the things that I find really strange about the gaming industry, in particular some developers and publishers, is that why would you ever actively go against the wishes of your core audience? Mm-hmm. Even though that's something that we're seeing a lot. So I'm a big a Battlefield player. I played pretty much every single Battlefield title, and some of them even competitively. And it's particularly in the last few entries, Battlefield 5, Battlefield 1 also in some way, and Battlefield 2042 very strongly, where in 2042, what the core audience told them, we just want to have a Battlefield game like Battlefield 3. That feels like Battlefield 3, but that's made with the tools and the technology of today, and that conveys this idea of gritty military combat, but still kind of arcadey, not too simulation-y, because that's what you have Hell Let Loose or Arma for. And And what they said is like, okay, we'll do that. Here's like a shooter that has like operators with special skills and weird voice lines and tacky things tacked on. And everybody's like,
Overwatchy. Yeah.
why did you guys do that? That is not Battlefield. That's not what we wanted. And that is kind of strange to me. Why would you force that upon the audience? Because those are the people that are going to carry your game and that are going to market it also to other people that maybe aren't in the core audience of that game. Once you lose those as your advocates, then what do you have left?
I guess they think, oh, we got those in the bag anyway. Let's bring in everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not enough to grow, but we also need to grow the growth.
Yes.
Always, because we have investors on our back.
But they actually made it really small and unsuccessful. So in the end, it goes exactly against what they're trying to achieve, right? Another very good example of this, for me, I played it a little bit as well, X-Defiant, right? X-Defiant was, and it's an interesting story because X-Defiant was released last year, free-to-play shooter, Ubisoft, and it's ending this year. In June already. They're taking it offline.
All that money, all that manpower.
Everything
gone.
down the drain. And it's just because it is a game that you expect to find it's free to play, but you expect to find it in the discount section. It's like a cheapened version of some other games. It's like you can just imagine how these people were thinking about creating it. Like they wanted to attract, on the one hand, the Call of Duty audience, and on the other hand, the Overwatch audience by kind of combining the core mechanics of those games with each other, but not really realizing that the people that are attracted to one or the other are completely different than the people on the other side. So they end up alienating basically both fan bases and making a game that is really for neither of them. So the Call of Duty people just stay with Call of Duty, and the Overwatch people stay with Overwatch, even though Overwatch 2, I think, was not well received. But yeah, game dies and it's gone.
And then you have a generational disaster, or possibly the biggest disaster in gaming history with Concord. That is basically let's do Overwatch, but with these really weird characters that nobody relates to, nobody asked for, nobody wanted, but the publishers decided, no, this is what people want. Let's make Guardians of the Galaxy and put it over. Let's code a weird Overwatch knockoff with a Guardians of the Galaxy coat of paint, and people are gonna like it as long as we market it and we shove it down people's throats. And that was like a gargantuan financial disaster. And I feel just really sorry for the people who had to put. I think they started 8 years ago when Overwatch became popular, who put 8 years of their life into this and probably went through a bunch of changes as the trends changed, because you got to chase the trends. The problem with chasing trends in games is that there's such a massive delay to whatever trend you chase, because games take so long to make. It's not like if you're making electronic music, you hear something, you can make a track within mere hours if you're that creative. With gaming, the trend is delayed. So by the time you decide you want to chase a trend, the trend is probably already over.
Yeah, assuming it takes multiple years to develop your game, you're always behind the curve.
So you have to be ahead of the curve. You have to anticipate the next trend. Yeah, and that was obviously a gargantuan disaster. I think it cost $400 million, and I just feel so sad for the developers who wasted their time on it and then are probably going to get laid off in the end, and it's none of their fault. Yeah.
It's not them that took the decisions that killed it, basically, right?
No, these decisions are made on the boards, you know.
Yeah, you can basically, like I said before, you can basically imagine how those meetings go, right? How people discuss about what a game should have, and yeah, it's very close to that Ubisoft model, of course, not with the same mechanics, but just that. There's a general understanding in those higher echelons of game design or game producing, where they agree upon what a game should have, and they all have the same ideas. And I think everything that really stood out in the past few years, the past 10 years, was something that was new. that brought something new to the table and then got copied by the big AAA publishers. One example that you could name here, for instance, is PUBG. Because PUBG was actually the original Battle Royale game. And even before that, it was PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, which was a mod for Arma 2, a really old game. And the mod actually appeared long after the game was already out. Arma 2 is kind of like an old engine already back then. And it was just, there was just something at that point really novel about that thing, that you just had 100 people that were dropped on an island. There was a circle, and that circle started getting smaller, and people started getting pushed towards each other. And then there is like this idea of having a free-for-all fight, and only one person remains, right? Which is
brilliant.
It's a brilliant concept. There is this just adrenaline-fueled, dopamine-inducing experience where you're just walking around in the very first moments of the game. You generally don't see anybody. You're looking around, and you're just like, oh my god, I want to make it to the last 10 and I want to win.
But and the game naturally goes through very different phases. Like you get dropped in, and you first have to look around,
find
equip
a weapon,
yourself, make sense of where you're at, try to orientate yourself, and you hear some battle in the distance. You say, oh, there's probably a lot of shooting going on this way. I might go the other way, or I might drop right in and get in on the action. And then you have the mid game where we get more encounters and try to make it through, or maybe try to escape all the different conflicts that are sparking on the map. And then in the very end game, it just gets so ridiculously intense when you know, oh, there's 10 players left.
Yeah,
and
I have a chance to win
map
now.
That is the only part of the map that is still available is this tiny building that we're all in. So there must be somebody here, and the heart rate just goes through the roof. It's so exciting.
It's an extremely good gameplay loop, and of course, the reason why I wanted to mention this here is because even though PUBG, I think in the end was overshadowed by other, let's call them clones, Fortnite and Warzone, the innovation itself of creating the Battle Royale game mode or game rules, I guess, was created by an indie developer. And I think that's something that is a very big change when we compare it to maybe 20 years ago, when all of the innovation was located actually in the big AAA studios. GTA 3, Call of Duty 4, Far Cry 2 or Far Cry 3, right? Those games were all really innovative for what they did. And those series continued, but they stagnated heavily after that.
I think if PlayerUnknown would have walked into a meeting at Activision and said, I got an idea for a mode in Call of Duty that is going to change the course of your franchise, and here's how it works, they would have said,
no.
Yeah, we cannot do this because people will die at the beginning of the game, and then they're locked out for the rest of the time. They need to enter another game. They need to wait for too long. It's not interesting to them.
Yeah. You can. I would imagine that if he had pitched that to a big studio or something like that, that they probably would have turned it down. Garry's Mod, another example, maybe even a better example of a huge mod that later became a standalone game, where a single game developer just realized, hey, the physics engine of Half-Life 2 is really cool. It's super detailed, and it simulates density and physics and weight in such a way that we haven't seen before yet. What if I create a mod that completely focused on just this aspect of the game, which is completely awesome.
Because the original Half-Life games barely make use. Half-Life 2 makes use a little bit of that, but not to the degree that it would be possible with what the engine provides. Yeah.
It's just him imagining what if we could use the full potential of the engine and making that possible. I remember, for instance, that I played a lot of Garry's Mod back then, and the coolest thing that I did, and I really liked it, I was still quite young back then, I built a full-on Rube Goldberg machine inside Garry's Mod. So where you had just like packages of crackers, like falling over like dominoes, and then triggering some kind of little gate that would open, a ball would roll out, and it would roll over a track and then hit something else and trigger another thing. And
it's like the Incredible Machine. You remember
exactly.
those games?
It is exactly like the Incredible Machine. And also, that's something I would have, if somebody had pitched that to a big publisher, it would have died in the boardroom. Absolutely. Nobody would have thought. But it became a huge success. Admittedly, not as big as PUBG, but it's still, the daring nature of indie game development is something that I think we really need right
It reminds
now.
you of this game Teardown. Have you played that?
No, but I know it. Yeah.
A fully voxel-based game with fully realized physics, and it's a destruction-based game. It's a heist game. You have to get to a certain part of the map, but how you get there is up to you. You can literally fly a plane through a building to get there, and it's all about like setting up the map, destroying the map in a way that you can get to your item and then extract as quickly as possible. So much fun to be at, and the mods are outrageous. The stuff you can do with the mods.
I have to check it out.
It's way too much fun. Too bad it doesn't have a co-op mode, and I think the reason for that is that all the voxels, the placements of the individual voxels would be too much to sync. Because most video games that are online don't sync the destruction, like the debris is not synced.
The Finals does that very well, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I've played it for a little bit. It was very good. It's true.
Yeah.
It has that super tacky, lame art style.
Yeah,
That's
the
turns
only
me off
thing
a little
I
bit.
don't really
but
like
the
about
destruction is phenomenal. It's integrated into the gameplay extremely well.
Yeah.
And that leads me actually, the fact that you talked about PUBG and Gary's mod leads me to one of my personal heartaches about modern day gaming is that we do not see true PC-centric AAA games. And because everything that comes out that is AAA these days is multi-platform. And the PC in particular has a few upsides, not just in terms of processing power, but in terms of input with mouse and keyboards that games don't make use of these days because they have to be compatible with the standard controller layout that everybody uses nowadays, with 4 face buttons, 2 bumpers on each side, and 2 analog sticks. Take, for example, I really love this game, Jedi Fallen Order. Fantastic game, but compare that to Jedi Academy or Jedi Outcast or whatever they were called back in the day. In those games, you used to have dozens of powers, of Jedi powers, and you could use them at will. Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor still feel a little bit like you're playing a Jedi with the handbrake on. They're not letting you go. They're not letting you go full crazy. And the reason I feel that is happening is because you don't have enough buttons on the damn controller. You're limited to the amount of buttons on your controller and to what is realistically inputtable within that framework. Yeah. Like with Jedi Academy, all these number buttons were assigned to a function. Or think of a game, like extreme case, like TIE Fighter or X-Wing, where you would have to literally have a manual open next to you with all the different
stickers on the keyboard buttons. It's like
the entire keyboard was fully functional in some way. It was truly like operating one of those machines, and I feel like the only reason we don't see that in those modern Jedi games is because of the standardized controller layout.
Yeah, I do have maybe 2 points to offer to at least kind of explain why. I mean, your explanation is probably one of the correct ones, because it's very obvious that if you have a controller versus a keyboard, there is just a net minus of the amount of keys that you have at your disposal to map things to. But at least in Fallen Order and in Jedi Survivor, there are 2 reasons that I can think of that kind of make it logical. Because one, Cal Kestis, the main character, is somebody that severed himself from the Force, right? And tried to forget it, tried to hide after Order 66. So it makes sense that there are just a lot of Force tricks or things he cannot or is not willing to use. That might be like a lore explanation for it. But I think the more gameplay-centric explanation is, of course, those games are Metroidvanias. So they are kind of designed around unlocking a more limited set of Force powers in a very specific order, so that there can be areas that are gated from you, not because there is some lock on the area, but because there's a certain technique or power that you need in order to get in there. So I do think that the game would have needed to be designed in a very different way if it was less done in a certain order, so to say.
And I particularly love Fallen Order because the levels are so tight and they loop around themselves so beautifully, and they have all these Metroidvania elements where you can return to a level and then suddenly have a completely different path through the level that is more interesting or quicker or more convenient. And I absolutely understand that, and I love how the puzzles are built around your limited skill set at any given moment. And they're just so perfectly tied in that they're not designed to be open-ended and we're done like with immersive sim style problem solving. I fully understand that. So it's actually not the perfect example I gave. I just miss that old school type PC game, AAA level production that makes use of the mouse and keyboards to its fullest extent and doesn't streamline its controls to be compatible with a controller or to be played on another platform and such.
Yeah, that's a very interesting notion because the Arma series. I'm a big fan of the Arma series. I've played a lot of the games, not Arma 1, but from Arma 2 on, I've played pretty much everything there. And of course, it's very milsim-y shooter. Lots of different key combinations that you can press. You have tons of different stances, so you can fully stand up. You can duck just a little bit to make your silhouette smaller. You can run while crouched, for instance, and you can also use the scroll wheel to change the speed of walking, so to say. So there's multiple degrees of walking speed. That's still in the newest outing, Arma Reforger, which I've been playing the last couple months.
I didn't know that existed. I thought Arma 3 was the latest.
Well, Arma Reforger is kind of like the snack in between. They're testing the Arma 4 engine. Arma 4 is supposed to be coming out in 2027, I think. And Arma Reforger is basically the public testing environment. It costs money as well. And it has a limited set of content, I would say, but it's still a lot of fun to play. And I think it's blown up in the last few months where a lot of big streamers started playing it. But the reason
I used to play Operation Flashpoint, and it's exactly what you described. Man, I love that game. And super I didn't have a manual back then. I think it was given to me back in the school days. And just trying to figure out all those controls was mind-blowing. But then when you accomplished a mission, it was like, holy shit, how did that happen?
How did I do that? Yeah. For Reforger, I think it's very interesting because Arma 3 was a purely PC game with good reason as well, because you had all these intricate controls. Arma Reforger is multi-platform and cross-platform also. So you actually can play together. Normally, most of the players are PC players, of course, but you can play together with Xbox and PlayStation players. And what I actually, because I've been playing with one guy that plays on PlayStation, what I actually haven't asked him is, are there any differences between our controls? Because I assume that there are certain actions that maybe he cannot do. I'd have to ask him, but that's a really interesting thing. I'm going to do that.
Usually what happens is, I think Destiny is the same. Is it? I'm not sure Destiny is cross-platform, but you can play Destiny with a controller, and if you do so, you get an aim assist.
Yeah. In most of the games, that is the case. Which I think in most cases it's a controversial topic, of course. But honestly, with a mouse, you can be way more accurate and way faster than you can be with a controller.
I cannot play first-person games without a mouse and keyboard, or any game that is based around aiming. It's even down to the point, like, I tried to play BioShock on the Steam Deck. But what I really disliked is that all the face buttons were used for like use, reload, whatever, and or crouch. And this means that I didn't have a dedicated finger to crouch and to jump. And I would always crouch like just for a moment. And so the crouch was a switch, I think. You have to press once to crouch and then another time to stand up. And it just didn't feel like I was really in control of my character. Like with the keyboard, I can so subtly crouch and jump while moving around, while strafing. It's like I feel like I'm in full control of what is happening. And it just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right. Also, when you control the camera on the Steam Deck with the right thumb, you're not having the thumb on the face buttons. So that's a real issue. I guess you could pull something off by using the back panels. Yeah. But once again, why do that if I have this?
Yeah. I think you might get a really different answer if you ask somebody that's like a pretty high level player, but controller player, like a console player. That would be interesting.
Yeah, look at their gameplay. Their gameplay doesn't look as good as even an average mouse and keyboard player.
Yeah, there are some controller players that are actually really good. I remember a video from a pretty large Battlefield streamer called Enders. Go check him out if you want to see some really high level gameplay. That he had like an interview with another guy that was at the same level that he was at, but on console actually.
Okay.
And that guy, the other player, I don't remember his name, but was also really, really good. Maybe not quite as fast as Enders, but there was a level of gameplay there that I didn't really know was possible with controller. But there are still limitations, of course. You always have a certain maximum turn rate that you can attain. And the higher you, of course, put that, the lower the precision, so to say. But it's not a completely different topic. Might be an interesting thing for us to talk about sometime as well. Controls.
Yes. But let's before we wrap this up, let's give some great examples of modern day games. I'll say I think the greatest first person shooter ever made, in my opinion, is a modern day AAA game, and that is Doom Eternal.
Mm-hmm.
To me, there's nothing that is designed more tightly and more compact and makes better use of its core mechanics than Doom Eternal. It is literally, in my opinion, a perfect game. And I love games like Elden Ring, but Elden Ring is messy and unbalanced, and it's just not as compact. And that is by design. It's supposed to be an more open-ended experience. But in doing that, it is not as perfectly put together as Doom Eternal. Doom Eternal and Sekiro are basically, in terms of game design philosophy, are exactly on the same page, to where those are games that know exactly what they're good at, and they're two games that require the player to meet it on the game's terms, not on the player's terms.
You have to learn how to fit in the game, right?
There is a correct way to play them.
Yeah. Maybe it's embarrassing to admit, but I have never played Doom Eternal. Good. A lot of people don't like it as much as Doom 2016. I think it's the greatest FPS ever made. Funny thing is, I was looking at some videos of Doom Eternal not too long ago, and people also looking at the music. And the music, I think, is really good in driving, and it made me want to go and play the game just by hearing the music, because it's just like this adrenaline-fueled, like metal kind of.
It's a legendary. It's a Gen soundtrack.
Yeah. But super fitting, right? It's just super fitting. Yeah. Nice.
You give a positive example.
Yeah, so a nice example that I can name. It completely connects to what we were earlier talking about, is games that you think might be unpitchable to a large publisher. And these two games definitely fit into that mold. And it makes it even more interesting that they were published by EA. It Takes Two and Split Fiction by Hazelight. Okay. I love those two games. They're really well designed, really fun to play. And I think there's two things to take away from that, is that It Takes Two and Split Fiction are two games that must be played in co-op. They cannot be played alone. And that's one thing that I would think would make them unpitchable to a lot of people.
Because that is bold.
Yeah, that is a bold choice to do that. And secondly is that both of those games, even though I think maybe It Takes Two gets the balance a little bit better than Split Fiction, they are designed to be played with people that might not be core gamers, which is also really interesting. So there's this interesting back and forth between trying to balance the difficulty so that it's just fun enough for somebody that is admittedly good at video games, and challenging enough, but not impossible for somebody that doesn't normally play video games. So I've played through It Takes Two with my girlfriend completely from start to finish. We both loved it, and we are now playing Split Fiction. I think we're about halfway. And it's a super fun experience.
I had the same experience with It Takes Two. One more each. How about that?
Yeah, you go first.
I haven't played through it yet, so shame on me. But it's almost controversial to say this, but I think Cyberpunk is amazing. I think in terms of presentation, writing, character design,
style,
world design, lore, world building, gameplay variety, it is almost second to none. I still haven't finished it, but I think it does certain things better than any other game before it.
Yeah. I went into it expecting it would be something else. I expected something like Fallout, but in a cyberpunk futuristic aesthetic. That tripped me over a little bit because I realized pretty quickly that's not what cyberpunk is. But once I started really concentrating on the story and the style and on the lore and everything, I loved it as well. It is an excellent game. And it's one of those must-play games, I think. Yeah.
It's not Red Dead Redemption or GTA. It's a role-playing game. And you have to meet it on those terms. And when you accept that and embrace it, it's just about as good as gaming gets.
Yes.
One thing I absolutely adore about it, and that's something I want to point out, is like look at Starfield and look how the dialogues look in that game. So you see face A, person A, or character A, see face A of character A, and they say something. And you see the next face, and they say something. And the only thing you ever see is a close-up of a face staring directly into the camera.
Yeah.
In Cyberpunk, the dialogues are so dynamic. You meet somebody leaning over at the bar. You look to your side, somebody starts talking to you. Then somebody else starts talking to you. You look over there. And suddenly the two of you get up, walk a little bit, sit down at a couch. Suddenly you're facing each other. Next thing you know, you enter a car, or somebody grabs you and pushes you into the car. And you're in first person the entire time as that happens.
That's
and then you pick up an item, and you look down, you're actually carrying that item or carrying that person. It's so unbelievably well done in that regard.
Yeah. And it's natural. It feels natural because those dialogues in Starfield, it's just like, that's not how conversations go. It's not that static. And at the same time, the facial expressions are very badly done in Starfield. So they're literally zooming in on a face that isn't really animated as well enough as it should be in this case. Because that could be a saving grace.
They're not putting their best foot forward.
No. They're putting the focus on the wrong thing. Yeah.
Okay,
so
you mentioned one more successful AAA.
Perfect segue into my last example here, because the last example is extremely recent. And I think a lot of people will have heard of this game already. Maybe not everybody has played it.
I know where this is going.
Yes. Who hasn't played it yet, I would say get this game. This game is one of the most awesome gaming products that's on the market right now, and it deserves all the attention that it's getting. Kingdom Come: Deliverance 2. A fantastic game, one of the best RPGs that I've ever played, and it's a monumental achievement for cinematic storytelling. The gameplay is fantastic. It's really tightly knit now. It was a little looser and a little bit more confusing in the first part. They got that balance down this time, but what really makes Kingdom Come: Deliverance 2 shine is the fantastic voice acting. All of the cutscenes are motion capped. They literally look like a movie that you're a part of, basically, and not in an unnatural way. It's telling a beautiful story of a set of very memorable characters, and that's another point where I think a lot of games don't really manage to attain that level, where after the game is done, you don't remember any of the characters anymore because they were either not distinct or they were just not memorable enough. And Kingdom Come really, really succeeds in that way. It really manages to give you a feeling of adventure, right? There is literally a bunch of friends that you're going on an adventure with, and everybody reacts differently. Everybody has a different personality. The game is just so logically built and so nicely formulated. For me, it's It's the explanation of what happened if you take an indie game, but you attach a AAA budget to it, because you really notice the massive increase in budget from the first game to now the sequel. And apparently the budget went in the right direction, right? That's an important thing.
Cool. Very cool. There's so many things more we could have talked about. We have some bullet points here. We haven't even talked about monetization yet, looking at you, EA. We haven't talked about the absolute cringeworthy writing that we encounter. I'm looking at you, the Veilguard.
The Veilguard. Don't forget the
Veilguard, worst title ever. What else? We haven't looked at, we've kind of touched on like poor system mechanics, low game world interactivity. We haven't even mentioned Saints Row Remake. We haven't mentioned Far Cry. But yeah, maybe we'll do episode 2.
This might warrant a second episode that we can do at some point, where we focus on some more other things. But I think for now, I think was a wild ride through the world of modern gaming. But it ended on a positive note, right?
Thanks for listening to us cynical old bastards.
Yeah, hating on things that are going on. Yeah. I think maybe comment down below what is your favorite or your least favorite modern game and why. And of course, for everybody that's watching now and would like to hear more hours of us prattling on about these types of subjects, subscribe if you aren't yet, and thank you. And see you in the next one.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.